Homestead Hound Inspections presents Washington Standards of Practice Overview, What is and isn't required to be inspected. Taken from Washington State Legislature, Chapter 308 through 408C of the WAC. Hi, I'm Peter Weber. I'll be doing this presentation. I'm a Washington DOL licensed home inspector, WSDA structural pest inspector, an InterNACHI certified professional inspector, and an ASHI certified inspector. The goal of this presentation is to educate and inform the public consumer and real estate professionals about the Washington Standards of Practice, otherwise known as the SOP, to provide understanding of what is required and not required to inspect, and what to expect from a standard home inspection. Some areas of the Washington SOP have been omitted to shorten this presentation to provide general information and can be fully viewed by going to apps.leg.wa.gov/WAC. Standards of Practice. Purpose and Scope. The purpose of a home inspection is to assess the condition of the residence at the time of the inspection using visual observations, simple tools, and normal homeowner operational controls, and to report deficiencies of specific systems and components. Inspectors must perform all inspections in compliance with the SOP set forth by the Washington State Department of Licensing. A home inspection is not technically exhaustive and does not identify concealed conditions or latent defects. This SOP is applicable to buildings with 4 or fewer dwellings units and their attached garages or carports. Again, this has been taken from the Washington State Legislature, Chapter 308 to 408C, WAC. Exclusions and limitations. Inspectors are not required to report on non-accessible visible items, service life, adequacy, efficiency, cost of repairs, and future conditions. Report on building suitability for special purposes. Report on environmental hazards and identify pests. Determine operating costs. Determine acoustical properties. Operate a system that is shut down. Operate a system that is functioning. Operate gas and water valves and circuit breakers. Perform any act contrary to law. Perform engineering services. Offer warranties or guarantees. Determine existence or inspect underground components. Inspect decorative items. Inspect detached structures and common elements of condominiums. Inspectors are also not required to perform any dangerous or harmful procedure, move ceiling tiles or personal property, dismantle any component, enter dangerous or non-readily accessible areas, inspect elevators or related equipment, inspect pools, spas, and courtyard equipment. Inspectors are not limited from examining other systems if the inspector is qualified and willing to do so. Structure. An inspection of the structure will include the visible foundation, floor framing, roof framing, and decking, other support and substructure, superstructure components, stairs, ventilation when applicable, and exposed concrete slabs in garages and habitable areas. The inspector will describe the type of building materials comprising the major structural components, enter and traverse attics and subfloor crawl spaces, inspect condition and serviceability of visible areas of foundation, substructure, chimneys, stairs, and attic roof structure, crawl spaces and basements for water intrusion, probe suspect areas of deterioration, describe any deficiencies, report all wood and pest conducive conditions, refer all pest issues to a pest control operator for follow-up. The inspector is not required to enter crawl spaces that have undersized access or requires excavation to enter, non-accessible areas or require disassembly or moving items to gain access, or unhealthy or unsafe conditions. An inspection of the exterior includes the visible wall coverings, trim, protective coverings and sealants, windows and doors, attached porches, decks, steps, balconies, handrails, guardrails, carports, eaves, soffits, fascia, and visible exterior portions of the chimney. The inspector will describe the exterior components visible from ground level, inspect all visible exterior portions of the building, probe suspect areas of deterioration, describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to inspect detached structures, fences, patios, and retaining walls, safety type glass or the integrity of thermal window sills, flues, or verify the presence of flue liners beyond what can be safely or readily seen. Test or evaluate the operation of security locks, devices, or systems. Enter areas beneath decks with less than 5 feet of clearance from the underside. Evaluate the function or condition of shutters, awnings, storm doors, storm windows, screens, and similar accessories. Roofs. An inspection of the roof includes the roof covering materials, gutter and downspout systems, visible flashings, roof vents, skylights, and any other roof penetrations, and the portions of the chimney and flues visible from the exterior. The inspector will traverse the roof to inspect it, inspect the gutter and downspout systems, visible flashings, soffits and fascia, skylights, and other roof penetrations. Report the manner in which the roof is ventilated, describe the type and general condition of roof coverings, report multiple layers of roofing when visible or readily apparent, describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to traverse a roof where, in the opinion of the inspector, doing so can damage roofing materials or be unsafe. Remove snow, ice, debris, or other material that obscures the roof surface. Inspect gutter and downspout systems concealed within the structure. Operate powered roof ventilators, and predict remaining life expectancy of roof coverings. Plumbing system. An inspection of the plumbing system includes visible water lines, visible waste, soil, and vent lines, fixtures and faucets, domestic hot water system, and fuel source. The inspector will describe the visible water supply and distribution piping materials, drain waste and vent materials, and water heating equipment. Report presence and functionality of sump pumps, waste ejector pumps when visible. The presence and location of a main water shutoff valve and/or fuel shutoff valves, or report that they were not found. The presence of a water temperature pressure relief valve, which is on the water heater. Whether or not the water temperature was tested for safe levels. Safe levels are anything below 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Inspect the condition of all accessible plumbing. Operate fixtures in order to observe functional flow. Check for functional drainage from fixtures. And describe any deficiencies of these systems or components in the inspection report. The inspector is not required to operate any valves, such as shutoff valves, inspect any system that is shut down or any plumbing components not readily accessible, floor drains and exterior drain systems, fire sprinkler systems, water conditioning equipment, including softeners and filter systems, private water supply systems, gas supply systems, interior components of exterior pumps or sealed sanitary waste lift systems, components such as but not limited to those related to solar water heating and hot water circulation. The inspector is also not required to test pressure or temperature relief valve on the water heater, shower pans for leaks, or use special equipment to test, scan, shower, or tub surrounds for moisture. Determine the potability of any water supply, the condition and operation of water wells and related pressure tanks and pumps, the quantity of water from on-site water supplies, the quality or condition and operation of on-site sewage disposal systems, and the inspector is not required to ignite any pilot lights. Electrical system. The inspection of the electrical system includes the service drop through the main panel, sub-panels, including feeders, branch circuits, connected devices, and light fixtures. The inspector will describe in the report the type of primary service, whether overhead or underground, voltage, amperage, overcurrent protection devices, fuses or breakers, and the type of branch wiring used. Report the existence of a connected service grounding. When no connection to service grounding electrode can be confirmed, inspect the main and branch circuit conductors for proper overcurrent protection and condition. Report, if present, solid conductor aluminum branch circuits. Verify the operation of representative number of accessible switches, receptacles, and light fixtures. The grounding and polarity of a representative number of receptacles. Ground fault circuit interrupter protection, otherwise known as GFI, and arc fault circuit interrupters, otherwise known as AFCI, protection were required. Report the location of any inoperative or missing GFCI and or AFCI devices. The inspector also will advise clients that homes without ground fault protection should have GFCI devices installed. Report on any circuit breaker panel or sub-panel known to have safety concerns. Describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to insert any tool, probe, or testing device into the main or sub-panels, activate electrical systems or branch circuits that are not energized, operate circuit breakers, service disconnects, or remove fuses, inspect ancillary systems, including low voltage and security systems, or systems not readily accessible. The inspector is also not required to dismantle any electrical device or control except for the main removal of the dead front covers from the main service panel and sub-panels. Move any objects, furniture, or appliances to gain access to any electrical component. Test every switch, receptacle, and fixture. Remove switch and receptacle cover plates. And verify the continuity of connected service grounds. Heating system. The inspection of the heating system includes the fuel source, heating equipment, heating distribution, operating controls, fuel pipes, chimneys, and venting, and auxiliary heating units. The inspector will describe the type of fuel, heating equipment, and heating distribution systems. Operate the system using normal, readily accessible control devices. Open readily accessible access panels or covers provided by the manufacturer or installer if readily detachable. Inspect the condition and operations of furnaces, boilers, heat pumps, electrical central heating units, and distribution systems. Visible flue pipes and related components to ensure functional operation and proper clearance from combustibles. Habitable space in the home to determine whether or not there is a functioning heat source present. Ensure there is air for combustion for fossil fuel heating devices. Electric board and end wall heaters to ensure they are functional. The inspector is not required to remove covers or panels that are not readily accessible or removable, dismantle any equipment, controls, or gauges, evaluate whether the type of material used to insulate pipes, ducts, jackets, and boilers is a health hazard, determine the capacity, adequacy, or efficiency of a heating system, or the adequacy of combustion air. Evaluate thermostats or controls other than to confirm that they actually turn a system on or off. The inspector will report any evidence that indicates the possible presence of an underground storage tank and describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to ignite pilot lights, operate heating devices or systems that do not respond to normal controls, any heating system when circumstances are not conducive to safe operation or when doing so will damage the equipment. Inspect or evaluate heat exchangers concealed inside furnaces and boilers, any heating equipment that is not readily accessible, the interior of chimneys and flues, installed heating system accessories or concealed distribution systems. Air conditioning system. The inspection of the air conditioning system includes the cooling equipment, cooling distribution equipment, and the operating controls. The inspector will describe the central air conditioning system and energy sources, operate the system using normal control devices, and measure and record temperature differential, open readily accessible access panels or covers, inspect the condition of controls and operative components, describe any deficiencies of these systems or components in the inspection report. The inspector is not required to activate cooling systems that have been shut down, inspect gas-fired refrigeration systems, evaporative coolers, window-mounted air conditioning units, and the system for refrigerant leaks. Check the coolant pressure and charge, determine the efficiency or adequacy of the system, operate cooling system components if the exterior temperature is below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Doing so will damage cooling equipment. Remove covers or panels that are not readily accessible, dismantle any equipment, controls, or gauges, determine how much current the unit is drawing, and evaluate digital type thermostats or control. Interiors. The inspection of the interior includes the walls, ceilings, floors, windows and doors, steps, stairways, balconies, and railings. The inspector will verify that steps, handrails, guardrails, stairways, and landings are installed wherever necessary and report when they are missing or in need of repair, and report when baluster spacing exceeds 4 inches. Inspect the overall condition of cabinets and countertops, caulking and grout, and bathroom counters, the interior walls, ceilings, and floors for indicators of concealed structural deficiencies, water infiltration, or major damage, and inspect the condition and operation of a representative number of windows and doors. Comment on the presence or absence of smoke detectors, and describe any non-cosmetic deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to report on cosmetic conditions related to the condition of interior components, and verify whether all walls, ceilings, doorways, cabinets, and window openings are square, straight, level, or plumb. Insulation and ventilation. The inspection of the insulation and ventilation includes the type and condition of the insulation and ventilation in viewable unfinished attics and subgrade areas, as well as the installed mechanical ventilation. The inspector will inspect the insulation, ventilation, and installed mechanical systems in viewable and accessible attics and unfinished subfloor areas. Describe the type of insulation in viewable and accessible unconditioned spaces and report any deficiencies of these systems or components. Report missing or inadequate vapor barriers in subfloor crawl spaces with earth floors, the absence of insulation at the interface between conditioned and unconditioned spaces were visible, and report the absence of insulation on heating system ductwork and plumbing supply in unconditioned spaces. The inspector is not required to determine the presence, extent, and type of insulation and vapor barriers concealed in the exterior walls, determine the thickness or R value of insulation above the ceiling, in the walls, or below the floors. Fireplaces and stoves include solid fuel and gas fireplaces, stoves, dampers, fireboxes, and hearths. The inspector will describe fireplaces and stoves, inspect dampers, fireboxes, and hearths, and describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to inspect flues and verify the presence of flue liners beyond what can safely and readily be seen, ignite fires in a fireplace or stove, determine the adequacy of draft, perform a chimney smoke test, inspect any solid fuel device being operated at the time of inspection, evaluate the installation or adequacy of fireplace inserts, evaluate modifications to a fireplace, stove, or chimney, and the inspector is not required to dismantle fireplaces or stove to inspect fireboxes. Site. The inspection of the site includes the building perimeter, land grade, and water drainage directly adjacent to the foundation, trees and vegetation that adversely affect the structure, walks, grade steps, driveways, patios, and retaining walls contiguous with the structure. The inspector will describe the material used for driveways, walkways, patios, and other flat work around the home. Inspect for serviceability of the driveways, steps, walkways, patios, flat work, and retaining walls contiguous with the structure. For proper grading and drainage slope, and vegetation in close proximity to the home. Describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to inspect fences, privacy walls, or retaining walls that are not contiguous with the structure. Report the condition of soil, trees, shrubs, or vegetation unless they adversely affect the structure. Evaluate hydrological or geological conditions, and determine the adequacy of bulkheads, seawalls, break walls, attached garages, or carports. The inspection of attached garages and carports include their framing, siding, roof, doors, windows, and installed electrical mechanical systems pertaining to the operation of the home. The inspector will inspect the condition and function of the overhead garage doors and associated hardware. Test the function of the garage door openers, their auto-reverse systems, and secondary entrapment devices when present. Inspect the condition and installation of any pedestrian doors. Inspect fire separation between the garage and house when applicable. Report as a fire hazard the presence of any ignition source that is within 18 inches of the garage floor. This means water heaters and furnaces, they need to be held up 18 inches from the floor to prevent ignition from sources that are stored within the garage. And the inspector will describe any deficiencies of these systems or components. The inspector is not required to determine whether or not a solid core pedestrian door that is not labeled is fire rated. Verify the functionality of garage door opener remote controls. Remove vehicles or personal property. Operate any equipment unless otherwise addressed in this SOP. Congratulations! You should now have a good general idea of what is and isn't inspected on a Washington Standard inspection. We would love to hear your comments and review. Please check us out at www.homesteadhoundinspections.com. Thank you for viewing our presentation.